So today I get to enjoy what I think is the best wings in town because I'm being served at Shaggy's Pizza and Eats. Awesome place in Stevensville. The patios are open, nice weather. Looking into stage 3 of reopening means heading out to restaurants or going for some good food, because today we're talking about showing love and care through acts of service. Service. It's one of the things we like best about eating out. Someone to cook for me, clean up for me, refill my drink for me. It's these little actions that are meaningful to a person who gives and receives love and care through acts of service. There's a story about Mother Teresa where one day she was working in the slums of India dressing the wounds of a dying leper. An American tourist asked permission to take a photograph of them. The tourist, observing the tenderness with which Mother Teresa dressed this leper's wound, said, "Sister, I wouldn't do what you are doing for $10 million. And Mother Teresa replied, "Neither would I." Why did she do it then? The answer is love. The Bible says that one of the primary ways we show love to others is by serving them. So one of our 5 love languages is acts of service, doing what others would like done for them. That's what we're talking about today. Dr. Gary Chapman, in his book, The 5 Love Languages, says that just like we all speak different verbal languages, everyone also has a love language, a preferred way to receive love and care and express love to others. He says that there are 5 love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. These are the ways we give and receive love and care. So if it makes you feel cared for to get a card of thanks or a hug or a compliment, but all I do to show you love is maybe give you a gift, you wouldn't feel cared for necessarily. How many of you love it when someone fixes you a special meal, does all the cleanup after dinner, washes or vacuums out the car, picks up the dog poop in the yard, makes your bed, helps you with your homework, or changes the baby's dirty diapers, or helps you clean the house or your room, or opens the door for you, takes a bunch of work off your desk and says, "Here, let me do that." Awesome, thanks, Shaggy.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Thank you.
Got some delicious wings to eat now. See, if those kind of things fill your love tank, maybe your love language is acts of service. It's a very common way to express love. See, Jesus expressed his love for his friends this way. The story is found in John chapter 13. Well, I definitely don't want my sister to make a big deal of this. In John chapter 13, verse 1 to 17, it says, "Before the festival of Passover, Jesus knew that his time had come to leave this world and go to the Father. So having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them fully." So Jesus and his disciples were sharing this evening meal, and the devil had already provoked Judas to betray Jesus. So Jesus knew the Father had given everything into his hands, and that everything that had come from God was returning to God. So he got it from the table, took off his robes, picking up a linen towel, he tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a wash basin and started washing his disciples' feet and then drying them with the towel that he was wearing. When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus said, "You don't understand what I'm doing now, but you will understand later." "No," Peter says, "you will never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "Unless I wash your feet, you won't have a place with me." Simon Peter said, "Lord, not only my feet then, but also my hands and my head." Jesus responded, "Those who have bathed need only to have their feet washed, because they are completely clean. You disciples are clean, but not every one of you." He knew who would betray him. That's why he said not every one of them was clean. After he washed the disciples' feet, he put on his robe and returned to his place at the table. And he said to them, "Do you know what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you speak correctly because of who I am. If I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you must wash each other's feet. I've given you an example. Just as I have done, you also must do. I assure you, servants aren't either greater than their master, nor are those who are sent greater than the one who sent them. Since you know these things, you'll be happy if you do them." See, it was the custom in this period of time that at a gathering, like a dinner party, they would have a servant, and that person's job was just to wash the feet of the guests coming in from the dirty roads. They were wearing sandals and they had dirty feet. Today, we'd offer to hang up somebody's jacket or offer them something to drink. If they come to your house, you say, "Do you want to freshen up?" and point them to the restroom, to the bathroom. Although we probably wouldn't go in there with you and wash your hands, that would be weird. But we offer courtesies. But there was no servant in this upper room. So as Luke tells it in his gospel, that the men began to argue about who was the greatest. And it seems this could have taken place around this event possibly. We have no servant. Who's going to wash our feet? It's not my job. I shouldn't have to do it. Have you heard that before? My kids say it all the time. Each of the disciples, I'm sure, would have had a reason why that particular job was beneath them. Peter maybe would say, "Well, I'm kind of acknowledged as the leader. I'm the top dog. I shouldn't have to do that." Andrew said, "My gifts maybe is evangelism. I bring people to Jesus. Washing feet is not my gift." You can maybe hear James or John saying, "We've got the inside track on being Jesus's right-hand man, the vice presidency, right? So we're not really foot washing people." And Judas might be saying, "Well, I take care of the money. Don't ask me." Thomas says, "Maybe I doubt that I should do that." But Jesus sets the example. Love in action. That's what acts of service is. Seeing the big picture and acting on what will be helpful, needed, and caring for another in task form. See, Dr. Chapman writes in his new book, Seen, Known, and Loved, he says, imagine a little girl looking out her bedroom window at the beautiful red and white begonias in the front yard flower bed. She sees all the weeds crowding out these lovely flowers that are growing. See, she loves her family flower bed, and so she decides to head out and pull up the ugliness that is taking over these beautiful flowered landscapes. So she heads out and begins to pull these weeds, but the roots, just like her dad taught her, trying not to uproot the beautiful flowers that are nestled next to the spiky, fuzzy weeds. So she stops after a while, only to realize she is not getting very far. But also she's disturbed some of the tender roots of the flowers that she's trying to save. She sees the job is too big for her, and overwhelmed, she puts her weed bucket away and just goes and washes her hands. Oftentimes, people who show love and care through acts of service feel this way. The world is filling with weeds, and it's too much for me. I can't do it all. And over time, we put our bucket away, wondering if any work we do will ever make a difference. See, God speaks the language of acts of service to you. He wants you to know that you're seen, and the acts of service that you do are not in vain. The fact is, our actions are even more powerful when they're fueled by love, because love transforms our simple desire to do good into something real and lasting. In Proverbs, the book of Proverbs says, whoever pursues righteousness and love finds life, prosperity, and honor. See, it's this magic combination of righteousness and love that leads to something big, prosperity and honor. God is perfectly right and full of love, hence his acts of service, dying on the cross and being so fully effective to save us from death. Did you know that prosperity literally means flourishing? So when righteousness and love combine, they create a sustaining power that overcomes a world of weeds and hopelessness. Being seen and known is an important part of this. Do you think it would have made a difference to that little girl if instead of going it alone, she went out to pull weeds with her mom or her dad, taking time to laugh and encourage each other? Then at the end of the day, when her weed bucket is full and she feels overwhelmed, her parent says to her, "Great job, we did it. We're going to go back at this again." These words to honor this little girl for the task gives her a sense of accomplishment. If you know someone who speaks the language of acts of service, they're probably a big picture person. They desire justice, longing for a better way for things to operate. God does this. From the beginning, he has this big picture, putting everything together in perfect harmony. Beautiful streams flow into rivers, into lakes, and then into oceans, and that water all feeds every beautiful thing. There is balance and beauty. Acts of service seeks balance and beauty. Speaking this love to another person can bring balance and beauty. God sees you and is acting just like in acts of service. We who speak this language of care need to see the needs of others and go into action. Love is an action word. It results in actions. God's love is always acting upon us. God never leaves or forsakes us. He always protects us, trusts in all things, hopes for all things, endures all things. God is an act of love. So what are acts of service anyways? Well, acts of service are doing things for other people that they would like you to do. Jesus in effect says he showed us an example to follow in this foot washing. So we're told to love people in this way, by serving, by Jesus. Now, this is my love language. And Jen says acts of service is the worst one of the languages because it's hard to serve others. She says all you have to do to show me love is say something nice, give me a hug, and she says I need to get her to scrub the tub or to wash all the dishes so that I feel loved. It's an act of service that gets your hands dirty. I guess some ways to show love are more emotional. Some are more monetary, some are more mental, some are more physical. That's just the way it is. And the Apostle Paul, he told the Galatian people to use their freedom to serve one another. An easy way to discover this is simply by asking. Communication is great, right? What are some things I can do for you that you appreciate? I gave my wife some words of affirmation the other day, as that's her love language, and I told her how much I appreciate that when I'm getting ready for bed, she goes and gets the bed all turned down and the pillows fluffed and ready. Boy, I love that. And if she was listening, she may have heard me saying that her doing that act of service makes me feel special. I like it, and I like her doing it. It fills my love bank. What does your partner really dislike doing? What if you did that for them? Get an oil change on the car, cut the grass, wash the dishes, pay the bills, run an errand so they don't have to. Ask your friends or your partner or your kids, what can I do for you today? It just hit me that most days Jen does ask me, is there anything that I can do for you today? Wow, good job, Jen. You're filling up my love bank. I'm a pretty lucky guy. These are really good wings. I love being served here. Care. In acts of service, it's important to remember it's a servant role, not a slave role. Some of you may be thinking similar to my wife that, well, just to show love to you, I've got to get my hands real dirty. Now I got to wait on this person hand and foot just to show them that I love them. I already do everything for my kids and I get no thanks or love from them. So how do we process this idea? Listen, a servant is someone who chooses to serve out of love. A slave feels forced to serve out of fear or manipulation or guilt. They may do the same thing, but for very different reasons. A servant offers. A slave is forced. I want to do this for you. I choose to do this for you. That's a lot different than I have to do this for you or I'm forced to do this for you. A servant serves with love. A slave serves with resentment. So some of this is our attitude. We should never feel dominated by another person. Those who are wanting to show love and care and acts of service, your attitude or thought in it should be a desire and choice to do these actions. So if you're fighting against it, ask yourself why. Is it that I'm being demeaned? Or is it that I'm being too proud and selfish or stubborn? Let your attitude be one of choice, offering to show care in these ways, not demanded to by another person. as a way to serve someone that you care about that speaks the language of acts of service, it's important that for these individuals, you don't create more work for this person or break commitments that you've made. These are only going to serve to damage their love bank, and you're making withdrawals without any deposits, and that's going to be harmful for them. So just like those who are trying to show love through acts of service to people who speak this language, there's a flip side of the coin to this. Acts of service makes requests, not demands. So now I'm speaking to people who actually speak this language. That's me. Perhaps those of us who speak this language of acts of service have a personality that's a little more wired to being a type A, strong-willed. So be careful not to dominate another person or make demands. If you enjoy being loved by acts of service, make sure that you ask rather than demand. When you demand things from others, they may do it, but it's no longer an act of love. They feel forced and they resent doing it. They won't enjoy it and you won't feel loved. Express what you do appreciate or would appreciate someone doing for you. Be sure not to nag or be passive aggressive in expressing what you'd like. So if I say, I'm looking for the kids, and they say, hey, where are the kids? Maybe if the grass wasn't so long, I could find them. I'm sure they're out there. I'll just have to get my machete. Would the grass get cut? Maybe. But do you feel loved by it? I'm going to guess not. Sometimes we make demands by giving ultimatums or even throwing tantrums. Do it or else. You get your way, but you don't get loved, and neither does the other person. So it's counterproductive. Instead of criticisms, nagging, threats, ultimatums, or tantrums, simply make requests. You may not always get what you want, but in the long run, you're more likely to feel loved. Because love is a choice. It can't be demanded or forced, so ask and let them choose. By the way, Dr. Chapman shares this wonderful insight. My spouse or a friend's criticism about my behavior may provide the clearest clue about their primary love language. So people criticize most loudly in the area where they have the deepest emotional need. So my complaints at home are often focused on acts of service because it's my least healthy way of saying I need to feel loved. Does anybody care about me? But it comes out like, why doesn't anyone ever close the door? If I never use the vacuum, we could probably sell it as never been used because no one else touches it. But that never lands on anyone well, especially a person who needs words of affirmation to feel loved. And so be listening for where the criticisms are coming from the people you care about, because it could be speaking to what their love language actually is. So when people ask Dr. Chapman, what if this love language doesn't come naturally to me? He'll say, so? Do you think it's natural for my wife to be organized, to make sure we don't run out of milk and perform these acts of service so that I feel cared for? No, but she makes an effort at it. In fact, I kind of maybe made her into a bit of a monster list maker, and because that's what she started doing when she married me. Now she makes lists for everything. She can't be stopped. She would say, I do it for Dan because I know the acts of service is his love language. She doesn't want to forget something because she knows it's important to me. Physical touch is not natural for me, but I try to make an effort to hold Jen's hand, to touch her face, that mushy romantic stuff. That's love. Love is a choice. Love is doing what is best for the other person no matter what it costs, even when it isn't natural. What would your relationship with your partner, child, parent, neighbor be like if you chose to act out of love rather than obligation? Ask them what could really help make their day a bit easier, more enjoyable, a way for them to feel more loved. See, love does, so we need to show it in our actions. Have a good week.